Hey guys, this is Zach back here with another episode of Clutch Crew Sports. Today I'm joined by Eric. Connor is on a vacation right now, so he's unable to join us in the call. But we are going to be talking about some new things on this show because now the NBA Finals are over. We're going to have more of a focus on the NBA offseason. We're going to share our thoughts on how Game 6 went last night. We're going to show you guys our DraftKings results. Just a little heads up, they weren't good. And
Don't spoil it.
I know I made my double lock last episode, which was unfortunate that I came off as very confident on that and didn't perform well. But I have a little bit of an excuse for that. So there's that going on. And then we've got some NBA news to talk about. This episode is mainly going to be NBA centered, just because there's not really a whole lot of news going on for football and college football. We're going to talk a little bit about college basketball, in particular, a graduate transfer that is deciding between a bunch of different schools. And we're not going to talk about the NBA draft yet because we are probably our next episode that we come out with is going to be a full episode dedicated to the NBA draft and our prediction. So Connor, Eric, and I will all predict. I don't know if everybody's going to make the call for it.
Yeah, I don't know if I'll be able to be in this one yet, but even if I'm not, I will make some kind of spreadsheet with my rough draft predictions, and I can send it to Zach and Connor, and they'll get it up on the screen for you guys. And
Yeah. For the YouTube, I would definitely suggest for this next video to watch it on YouTube if you can, because it's just going to be easier to follow along with, because we'll have a kind of like a PowerPoint presentation with our mock draft, and maybe I'll put in even a little bit of that, draft music, the when
with the third pick.
Yeah. that stuff, dude, that's classic, man. So I'm gonna try and put that in because that's so iconic, when you hear the little dun 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 dun. So we're gonna have like little pictures of players and teams and stuff, so it's gonna be a fun different kind of episode because that's like all we're gonna be focusing on in that one. And then after the draft, we'll talk about it a little bit, and if there's any big surprises, or obviously trades with Anthony Davis being a potential trade with draft picks going on. So this draft could end up being pretty significant for the rest of the league. Usually rookies don't have a big impact on the first season that they play in, but Zion Williamson is very capable of delivering a great season for New Orleans. So you never know. And obviously trades with current players could shake things up quite a bit. I remember a couple years ago when Jimmy Butler was traded from the Bulls to the Timberwolves, that was a big deal. So if there's something like that or even bigger, that's going to be something to talk about in the follow-up episode to that. So those are some of the events planned for the next couple podcasts that we're going to be doing. And obviously if there's breaking football news, we're going to cover that too, because this isn't just a NBA channel. So that's just all that's big in the sports world right now that we really know about. Like golf and baseball, we don't really follow. So the NBA, NFL, and college is what we're going to be mainly talking about. And right now it just so happens to be NBA. But once we get into October, September, that time of year, it's going to be mostly all football because NBA might be going on, but most people are going to be tuned into the NFL and college. But with that being said, the closeout game, final game of the NBA season last night, the Raptors won 114 to 110. The score looks a little bit more than it really was because this game really did come down to the last possession. There was like 0.9 seconds left, and Toronto got some free throws, but it was Golden State had a chance to win it. They had 9 seconds after. Well, this was after a careless pass by Danny Green. He almost cost the Raptors. If the Warriors had won this game, we would be having a totally different discussion on how careless the Raptors played the end of the game, because they really got away with. They got pretty lucky, obviously, with the injuries and everything, but even as far as the end of the game went, they almost blew it again with that turnover. Golden State forced a turnover by Toronto with about 9 seconds left. Danny Green had a bad pass to Siakam that went out of bounds, gave Golden State the ball, and I believe they were only down by one. So if all they needed was a 2-point shot to take the lead. I could be wrong. Maybe they needed
a
2 to tie it.
It was 1 point.
Okay, it's 1 point. Yeah. So it was only a 1-point game. Golden State called a timeout so they could inbound it on their side of the basket. So they got a pass off to Draymond Green. At first, it looked like it could be a turnover by Golden State. I wasn't sure if Green was going to be able to hang on to it, but he was, and then he gave it up to Steph. And Steph actually had a pretty clean look at a three-pointer, but he ended up missing it. He missed it pretty badly, and there was kind of like a fight for the rebound. Golden State got the rebound, then they called the timeout to draw the technical foul because there was only 0.9 seconds left. That was their only hope. If they had a timeout, that would have been better for them because then they could have tried to get a miracle shot. But after that, it was over essentially. There was very small chance that Golden State would have been able to intercept a Toronto pass and shoot it from like half court and make it. But Steph actually did have, and Eric, I don't know if you paid attention to the end of the quarters, but at the end of the first quarter and at the end of the second quarter, Steph,
those shots he almost made.
Oh my God, he almost made them.
The first one especially,
yeah,
it looked like that one was going in, and when it didn't, I like.
You would believe it because it's Steph. Like obviously you don't think it's going in, but he's done it before, so you got to give him the respect of the ability to do it. But that first one, I was like, oh my God, is that going in? But it was like, the crowd was like, oh, ooh, and then they like sighed because it was like the build up the roar.
Yeah, you could tell they got like really excited for a second, and then oh, they wanted to blow up, but then the disappointment kicked in.
Yeah, you don't expect those 60-foot shots to go in or whatever, however far away it was, but he missed them. If he'd made one of them, that could have been a difference in the game. But he missed a much more realistic shooting of a 3-point shot in those closing seconds, like I said, and then Toronto was able to get the win. But the main storyline in this game is the Klay Thompson injury, and he's ended up suffering from a torn ACL injury, so obviously a significant, serious injury that he had, and it was crazy that he was able to come back onto the court to shoot those free throws, and he made both of them. I was shocked by that. I thought, and then I was also shocked that he didn't come back because I figured with him coming back, like walking back into the game to shoot those free throws, I thought, oh, maybe there's a chance he'll be able to come back because if he ends up not shooting those free throws, then he gets disqualified from the game. He couldn't come back even if he was healthy. So he did that, I think, to protect himself from the chance that he'd be able to come back. And then a few minutes later, Doris Burke reported that he was done for the game. So I was thinking, that was kind of weird because he shoots those free throws and then they immediately foul Siakam to get him off the court. So really, you're just kind of canceling out those free throws with Toronto shooting some. So that was kind of weird. I thought they should have let someone else shoot them. But Klay doesn't come back from the game. And I'll put up the stats here. He had 30 points. in 32 minutes. He was sensational. 4 of 6 from three-pointers. He shot 10. He made 10 of 10 free throws, and I want to say like 9 of them. I don't know if he got fouled on 2 3-point shots or if it was 3, but he got fouled on at least two.
I believe he got fouled on. Well, I would say 3, but then
he made those
maybe
2.
another one did. Maybe it was just twice.
Maybe, yeah. Look, because the math wouldn't add up if it was 3 times.
Yeah, that's what I was thinking.
Yeah. So, but I thought it was 3 times 2. But either way, it was twice that he got fouled on 3-point shots, which is pretty rare for any game, let alone a finals game, when players are much more aware of their fouling, or at least they should be. Probably one of them was Kyle Lowry, but
your favorite player.
Yeah. But Lowry he saved himself from a potential meme from his performance. He was Siakam was good. They tied each other in points, but Lowry's plus minus was plus 16, by far the most for probably any player. Klay's was plus 5, the biggest for the Warriors. Quinn Cook, man, negative 16. That's bad. But and that was a part of my DraftKings problem. He didn't play very well. You don't expect him to, but this is interesting though. Just now looking at this, the Warriors, of course, they have their 5 starters, and then they played 6 different players. So they played 11 players in the game, and Toronto only played 8. So Golden State was trying to use everybody they possibly could to, Andrew Bogut played some minutes, Jerebko played some minutes, not for very long, but they tried everything. They tried, especially with Klay going down. They had to play Quinn Cook more minutes, and the Klay injury was the turning point. It was, to me, this was the best pure basketball game that I watched out of the 6 games. I didn't watch game 4, but there was 14 lead changes at the end of the first half, so that just tells you how competitive and how back and forth it was. And it was great. Like, Toronto would go up by 5, Golden State would knock down a 3 and get some free throws. It'd be tied again. Toronto would score. Golden State would take the lead for a little bit. Toronto would take. It was just a back and forth game, and it was pretty good. It was high offense in the first half, and it was a close game, and it was one where you were thinking, oh, it's going to come down to the last minute or so, and it ended up doing so. But then when Klay got injured, it felt like the Warriors had no shot. It just felt like everything that was, with all the injuries and everything happening, that it was Toronto was seriously outmatching them with their starting lineup. Because you want to go Lowry or Curry, I'll go with Curry, even though Lowry had the better game. And then you got Kawhi or whoever. Just looking at the Warriors starting 5 compared to the Raptors starting 5, it's a big mismatch in favor of the Raptors. So when Klay went down, and plus Klay was the best player, I think, in the game for both teams, really. He ended up having the most points out of everybody and still missing that fourth quarter. So, Game 6 Klay, they kept mentioning it, and I failed to talk about it in the podcast of the last episode, but Klay is notorious for having great Game 6s. They said he scored 41 against OKC that year in the conference finals. They played the Thunder the last year that Durant was on OKC. I don't know if Eric remembers that, being a Thunder fan, but
yes, I do.
You do? Okay.
Sadly, yes.
Yeah. So Klay, for whatever reason, Game 6 Klay is like a thing where he plays amazing, and I didn't even think about that in the last episode, but it came, the narrative was true again for this, because he played very well, and I believe if he hadn't gotten hurt, I believe the Warriors would have won the game, because they were winning at the point when Klay got hurt, and it would have just been another offensive threat for him because Golden State only scored 22 in the fourth quarter, which was their least amount of scoring from any quarter. So they obviously missed his offensive threat, and defensively, he had two steals, so he was playing well defensively for him. So I think they really missed that. And then if you, I think past Warriors teams would have been able to handle this better because it seemed like the past Warriors teams had a deeper and better bench where they could recover from an injury like this. But this bench on the Warriors is not very good. Probably one of the worst benches in the league. And they weren't able to compensate. So to me, those were the big takeaways from the game. But congrats to Toronto winning their first finals. And, people will say the injuries and everything. They definitely got some breaks with not just this series, but Joel Embiid was sick and injured in a bunch of the games against Philly. So they definitely had a easier road. So, but I mean, you still got to win the games, and that's all that matters at the end of the day. Nobody's gonna be able to take this away from them. So, congrats to them, and they they with that trade with DeMar DeRozan earlier in the year, it was one of those trades that was very, on paper, it was very questionable because everybody's assuming that Kawhi Leonard's a 1 year rental player, and he's also coming off a season where he didn't really play at all. So whereas DeRozan's like the face of Toronto, he's like their superhero guy. He's like committed to the city. He's their star player and everything. He loves the team loves him. So you trade him away for a guy that's potentially only staying 1 year, but I think everybody, the Toronto side, anyways, is happy with the trade because even if he leaves them in free agency, they've still won their first ever championship, and if he leaves, probably their first for a little bit longer. Because if he leaves, I don't think they're going to be back in the finals, but they do have a good team around them for the future. Siakam, I think he's like 27 or something, but he's really turning into a star player. And Lowry is all. I mean, as much as I make fun of him and criticize him, he's still an all-star caliber point guard. He is definitely in the top 50% of all point guards in the league. And then you've got young guys like Van Vliet, who somehow he went undrafted. I don't know how, because he was a pretty good player at Wichita State, but Gasol and Danny Green, Powell, they've still got a really good team around them, so they're going to be back in the playoffs for sure. And Nick Nurse is a great coach. It'll be interesting, though, I think, the Warriors to see if their dynasty, so to say, has ended. But I don't think their dynasty has ended just because when dynasties end, they usually drop off really quickly. You look at the Miami Heat and LeBron leaves and they struggle to make the playoffs or the 8th seed or whatever. I don't think that's going to be the case with this Warriors team. I still think they're going to be a top seed in the West, and I still think they're going to be competing for the finals. So I don't think the Warriors dynasty has ended, but it's definitely taken a hit. But I'll let Eric give his thoughts now on what he thought happened in this game.
Yeah, Zach definitely covered a lot there
Yeah,
and
I
made a lot of great
realized
points.
that. Thank you. And it's I really went on, man. I just kept
Well, I mean,
talking.
it's
So
okay, man. You were in the zone, and it's all good, man. No worries, no worries. There isn't really too much else for me to add, but I guess what I will say in terms of just watching the game, Zach definitely did a great job analyzing how the game went from start to finish and the key takeaways like the Klay Thompson injury and stuff like that. I guess for me, like what I'll talk about is this game was really weird for me to watch emotionally, if that makes sense. Because as Zach said, the game was really back and forth in the beginning. and it was really fun to watch. I didn't know how it was going to go when Kyle Lowry hit 3 threes to start the game, and the Raptors had that big run early in the game, which is not what I was expecting. I was expecting Golden State to be the team to get the hot start, with it being the final game in Oracle, and Kevin Durant had just got hurt. They wanted to win it for Kevin, and I was expecting the game to start the other way around. I figured, and I think I mentioned it in the last podcast, that that's what I thought was going to happen. But if I didn't, then I'll say it now. I thought the Warriors were going to get off to the hot start. So when Toronto did, that kind of surprised me. And I was wondering if we were heading into a blowout, because while Klay Thompson had a great game, he wasn't getting the ball a lot early on within the first few minutes of the game. And because I think Looney actually got their first 2 points, it was their first 2 baskets. It was really weird. I want to say a good 4 or 5 minutes into the game, that Kawhi, Klay, and Steph and Draymond, none of them had scored any points. It was really weird. It was fun, but it was weird. I was not expecting that, and that type of thing hurt my DraftKings lineup, which we'll get to later. But so the game was going back and forth. I know the Raptors had a 3-point lead at halftime, and as Zach said, there were a ton of lead changes. So I was having a great time watching this. I was messaging Zach and Connor. We have a little Facebook message group where we'll chat when we talk about stuff we're going to talk about in the podcast, or talk about the game that we're watching or whatever. And we were all talking about it, how we were really enjoying watching this game, except for how our DraftKings lineups were going. We were enjoying everything else. And so then we get into the second half, and the Raptors had the 3-point lead, and then it once again continued to be back and forth. And then Klay Thompson goes down with that injury, and my emotions just almost did a complete 180. Like, it wasn't like I was suddenly rooting for the Warriors to win the game, but because of this, when the Raptors did end up winning the game, I didn't feel as excited as I felt like I would for them, because even though I'm not a Raptors fan, I'm always cool with whenever there's a team that's never won a championship before getting their first championship. I'm never going to complain, especially since my main sport is being football. I'm a fan of a team that's never won a Super Bowl, let alone ever been to one. So it's always cool for me when a new team wins a championship. So, but when Klay went down, it just didn't feel right. I don't know. And then also what made it weird was at the very end of the game, like Zach mentioned, when the Warriors called the timeout, even though they didn't have any, which drew the technical, Kawhi shot the free throw and made it. It looked like they were just going to inbound it. It was going to be over. Oh, Toronto wins. But then there was that weird thing where Iguodala fouled Kawhi before the inbound, so then they didn't count that, and then they were reviewing it for a long time. I was like, what is taking so long here to figure this out?
I think Kawhi even said, like, it's okay, like, it's fine, we want the game over. Like, I think he was even, like, like, just trying to say, like, hey, like, nobody, the Warriors don't want to drag this out, and we want to start celebrating. Like, I think both teams just wanted.
Yeah, I mean, I understand that. I mean, technically, the refs did make the right call, because Iguodala did foul him before the inbound pass. But what I didn't understand was, why was it taking so long for them to review or do whatever it was they were doing? I mean, that lasted a good 5 minutes at least.
And my thoughts on the reviews are, I believe that these reviews should take 45 seconds or so, and that's it. It's you put a clock on when the official starts watching the play, and you give them 45 seconds, and if they can't decide that the call should change, then you stick with the original call. It's got to be obvious to be overturned, So,
Mm-hmm.
if you can't see it obviously being a wrong call, then you just keep the original one and go forward because it takes so long, these reviews, it really draws the enthusiasm out of the game. And this one, the game was already over at this point, but normally, these games are, high, very exciting. And then the reviews happen and it's like, oh, you gotta wait. So,
Yeah, well, and especially I could understand them. I don't know how they would come to some kind of agreement with this, but to me, if it seems like it could be a really important situation that could really affect the outcome of the game, where it's like, man, we really need to get this call right. Then in that type of instance, I'm okay if they take a little more time. But in this case, even if they let the foul go, then the game's over. If they keep the foul call, which is what ended up happening, Kawhi's going to shoot free throws. Most likely, if he misses the first one, he probably just misses the second one on purpose, so they don't have time to grab the
mhm.
ball and try to shoot it really quick or something. I It just seemed so pointless. Now I know
Yeah.
for Raptors fans, obviously they didn't care because they knew they were about to win the championship, so they're in celebrating mode and they're happy. And for Warriors fans, they didn't really care either because they knew the game was over and were dejected and just ready to
Mhm.
get out of the building or whatever. But for a fan like me who was just watching as a neutral fan and wanting it to be a great game, it definitely dampened the spirits for me a little bit. So because of the Klay injury and that weird call at the end of the game that where they had to review for 5-10 minutes, it just felt weird. But anyway, my ultimate thought at the end of the game, as Zach mentioned, Steph Curry missed that 3-pointer at the end, which he had a pretty good look on. So
He missed it
usually,
bad too. Like
yeah,
yeah. It was,
I mean, it wasn't as bad as the Kyle Lowry one in the other
yeah.
game, but it was not a great shot, even
Yeah.
though he had a pretty good look at it. So normally I do my rants at the end of the episodes, but I'm going to go ahead and do my rant now. And today I'm ranting on Steph Curry. So before I rant on Steph Curry, I like Steph Curry. He's a cool guy. Most of the time, he's a great player. I have nothing but respect for him. However, in this instance, I have to go off on him a little bit. And it's not just on Steph Curry too. It's also on people that were defending him that got me going a little bit too. But I felt like Steph was a ghost for a majority of this game. I know he had 21 points, but I remember Zach had mentioned in the last video when Kyle Lowry had a certain amount of points that it just felt like a quiet. It was
Hmm.
like you said, it was like the quietest 20 points you'd ever seen or something like that.
Yeah.
And I feel like this game with Steph Curry and Kawhi Leonard too, I felt like both of the star players for each team were a little disappointing in this game, but more so Steph because the Warriors were the team that lost the game. I just felt like, I mean, as we can see here, he was 3-11 for three. Now I know like three of those, as Zach mentioned, were like full court shots, so I'm not going to
Sure.
judge him for those misses. But he still overall did not shoot well in this game. And everybody says that he is the best shooter in NBA history. There's a lot of people that say that.
I would agree with that.
And I would agree too, in the sense, normally, in terms of how he hits those deep threes and everything like that. But for whatever reason, the only reason why I don't know for sure if I could say that, it seems like when the games are in the highest moments, whether it's in the playoffs or the finals or whatever, especially in the finals, it just seems like he comes up short in that big moment. And I would
Hmm.
love for him to be successful in the big moments. Like I said, I think he's a great player. He's a great guy. I I feel like he's relatable to a lot of people. Like I would have been, as much as I wanted the Raptors to win, if he hits that game-winning three, I'm cool with it. I don't hate the guy,
Mm-hmm.
and but I just feel like when the game is in the big moments, he's not been able to step up. And I felt like, especially when Klay Thompson went down, it's like, look, man, KD's already out. Now Klay's out. He was the only true jump shooter really left on that Warriors team. And I felt like he needed to come up big, and he didn't.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, a lot of the commentators were saying during. I could even rant on them too, because commentators were saying during the game, "Oh, I like how he's not trying to force shots, and I like how he's passing when he needs to, and which is all good." And people that are defending him are like, "Oh, well, he averaged 30 points a game, and which he got 47 in that one, which really skews the average, but." They're saying, oh, he averaged 30 points a game and he was getting double teamed and triple teamed the whole game. How can you give him slack? He was not being double teamed and triple teamed on every time where he took a shot, because when he was being double teamed was when he was passing the ball, which is the smart thing to do in that situation.
Mm-hmm.
But when he had looks, he wasn't getting them. And especially at the end of the game, it's like the game's on the line, man. Your team is
Yeah,
counting on
definitely.
you. Because he got 47 points in game 3 when Durant and Klay were out. They were out the whole game for that whole game, both of those
Mm-hmm.
players. And he got 47 points. So where was that Steph Curry in game 6 in an elimination game when you're down 3 games to 2 trying to force a game 7? It's like he just vanished into thin air. And the people that were defending him, I'm thinking, how can you defend him? There was a stat that came up too before. I don't know if you saw this, Zach, but before the Warriors' final possession there, and it said something to the
I
effect
think I
that
remember this. Yeah.
he was 0 for 7 and tying or go ahead shots with under 20 seconds left, and in during the NBA Finals throughout his career.
Yeah.
Like, that's not good.
No, it's not.
And so I don't know. To me, Michael Jordan will always be the best player of all time, because it didn't matter if he was getting double teamed. He found ways to get open, and then he made the shots more often than he missed them. And just because of how clutch he is, that's why I always feel like he's going to be the greatest player, at least right now. I don't think LeBron's better. I don't think Steph's better. I don't think Kobe's better. There's really not anybody else you could consider saying is better than him
I
right
mean,
now. But
yeah, no, not right now, but I mean, I always put Kareem in that discussion too. He's my number 2 all time player.
yeah, I mean, Kareem
But
is the all-time leading scorer,
yeah,
so I could see a case being made for him. But
but
with these
I've got
current
Jordan.
players,
I've got
yeah,
Jordan as number 1. But
with these current, that could be a future topic, be like our
yeah,
top 10 players of all time or something. See, guys, we think of stuff on the fly here at Clutch Crew Sports, you know.
definitely.
Just so we came up with these rants and current events, like we're just making stuff up on the fly, guys.
Yeah.
We can make a plan and be impromptu at the same time. But that pretty much concludes my rant. But I ultimately felt like Steph Curry was the ultimate reason they lost this game. And I believe, Zach, you had mentioned it in a previous podcast where we were talking about future NBA Finals MVP predictions.
Mm-hmm.
And I believe you had mentioned that you felt like Klay Thompson would be the
Yeah, I
Warriors
did.
MVP if they had won. At that time, when we did the podcast, I didn't necessarily feel confident with that, especially even though the Warriors lost game 3 when Steph had that 47-point
Mm-hmm.
game. I would have said, nah, it's probably still going to be Steph. But if Klay Thompson had not gotten injured, and if the Warriors had won game 6, and assuming then if they were to go on and win game 7 with a healthy Klay, I agree that Klay Thompson probably would have been the Finals MVP, and I don't necessarily think he's a better player overall than Steph. I think Steph is a better player in general, but I feel like in this series, Klay Thompson was better. And
He was
then how
definitely
would
more
that?
consistent.
How would that? Yeah, he was more consistent than anything. Like Steph may have had a couple better games, but Klay was better
Yeah.
overall throughout the whole seven. Or well, it would have been seven if they had won.
Mm-hmm.
So I don't know, man. And to me, that just for people that want to say Steph is an all-time great or one of the greatest players, or even maybe the greatest player of all time. How can you really say that though if he would have 4 championships and not have been the Finals MVP in any of them?
Yeah.
And you could even say, well, for 2 of them, Kevin Durant was there. Okay, that's fine. He's another all-time great player. But what about the first one when Andre Iguodala got it? What about this one
Mm-hmm.
where it would have been Klay Thompson that got it?
Yeah.
That, to me, is almost more of a hurt to his legacy than a help in a weird way. I mean, obviously getting the championships is a good thing, but if you're trying to build a resume to where you're an all-time great
Yeah.
player, it doesn't look good when in all of your championships you never won the Finals MVP.
Mm-hmm.
So whereas Michael Jordan was obviously the MVP all 6 times. So and he had he didn't have as great of a cast as the Warriors would have had going into this if they were all healthy. But he did have some good players on that team, but obviously he showed his dominance when he needed to, and
Mm-hmm.
his finals numbers are crazy. But
Yeah.
but so you could argue that DeMarcus Cousins had some bad moments towards the end of the game, or
Yeah, I talked
you
to
could
you about his missed free throws.
his missed free
That to me,
throws.
I was disappointed with that, but I can definitely see why it's Steph. Steph's supposed to he'd be the leader of the team and their number one option, especially with Klay gone. So
Yeah,
but
and I felt like it was weird. I just felt like he disappeared in the game. I mean, he was only I'll say 6 of 14 because of the 3 half court shots or
yeah,
full court shots that he took. But still 6 of 14 is under 50%, which for Steph is not a good standard for him.
yeah.
He had the 3 turnovers.
What he
It
needs
just
is
didn't.
he needs the Dame time clutch gene because Dame he makes those game winning shots, but
Yeah, see, that's the thing.
Steph
I mean, you could argue, if you're a coach of a team and your team is in the NBA Finals and you can pick a point guard to take the game-winning 3-point shot at the buzzer, who are you taking, Steph or Damian? And
I'm
you could
taking
argue,
Damian.
even though
Yeah,
most people might say Steph is the better player.
yeah.
I mean, look at that 3 that he hit to knock my Thunder out of the playoffs. My God, dude, that was an insane shot. I was like, there's no way he's making this. Oh, my
Yeah.
God, I can't believe he actually made that. So you could definitely argue that. So, man, I
Yeah.
talked way longer about the game, too, than I thought I
Oh,
would.
it's cool, man. It's cool.
Yeah. So
But I mean,
there's your rant for this podcast,
that was
guys.
a good rant. And earlier you were saying, "Oh, I don't think my rant's gonna be that long," but it was a good rant, I think, because it wasn't like an emotional rant too. Like it was a logical rant.
Yeah, and
So
obviously I'm not bashing
yeah,
Steph Curry as a player. I'm not saying Steph Curry sucks or that he's terrible, but I just feel like he didn't come through when his team needed him, and I found it, and then I guess I just found it even crazier when I saw people all over the internet and social media
hmm
saying, "Well, how can you judge him? He had a great series," and I'm like, I could argue Klay Thompson had a better series, or he was double teamed the whole time. Like, no, he wasn't. Maybe he was. He was being chased around a lot, but
yeah,
that's why in those situations where if he's being double teamed, you find ways to have somebody else hold the ball, set some
and
screens, have him run around, and then come open off of a pick or
because
something. You
he
don't.
yeah
Yeah, go ahead.
he's like the best to me. He's probably the best player that he doesn't need the ball in his hands to get a shot because he'll give it up to somebody and he'll run around the court or he'll run not the whole court but the half court. He'll run around the half court like 3 times before he gets open. Like his mileage is like near the top of the league and
Oh,
like
I'm sure.
how far how much he runs during games. So he's constantly moving. So defending him is tough. But
Yeah, and
you give
that's what they needed to do more of in that situation when he was being double teamed. Don't have him running up the court with the ball with two defenders around him. Of course,
Yeah.
he's not going to get an open look in that situation. Have him get it to Draymond or Livingston or anybody else. Have some of the big, set some screens, move them around. Like you said, even if it takes 3 or 4 times, eventually he's going to get open. Then he gets an open look and takes the shot. That's how Steph thrives, as you
Yeah.
said. Whereas, if he's double teamed bringing the ball at the court, he's not necessarily going to be able to find a way to create himself a great shot in that situation. But give him a couple screens, move him around. I don't know. That upset me even more when I saw people saying, how could people say that he was the reason why they lost? Like, well, he kind of was.
Yeah. Yeah. So moving on now from that, we're going to talk about the DraftKings. I don't want to talk about this too much because we did talk a lot there about the game itself, which was good, But the DraftKings lineup, this is probably the worst one that we've ever had. And the only person who won and he got 5th place was Eric's friend Robert, who finished in 5th.
Shout out to my man Robert.
Yep, he did better than all of us. So, and then Eric got 7th place. I got 9th place. Connor got 10th place. And I know I was, very confident with my prediction about double lock. But I think one other person had Klay as their captain. But other than that, I had Klay as my captain. And when he got injured in the 3rd quarter, I texted the guys and I was like, well, that's it for me because I was in 5th place a good part of the night, and I believe Connor was actually in 6th place, and I had like a 5 to 6 point lead over Connor. And the main difference in our teams, while we might have had our worst guys on our team might have been different. Like my worst guy was Quinn Cook, Connor's was that Damian Jones guy or whatever. Yeah, Damian Jones. And then Eric had Urepko. Like those guys, I didn't really factor in because they're barely playing. But the only real difference between our teams ended up being our captains because a lot of us had Klay, but I had Klay as my captain. A lot of us had Kawhi, but Eric and Connor had Kawhi as their captain. So the way you would move up and down from, especially because the top 3 guys all had Kyle Lowry, who had a big night, and Siakam had a big night too. Let me look at this first guy's lineup to see. DeMarcus Cousins, he outperformed his contract or not his contract, his his fantasy value. I mean, it's kind of a contract, yeah.
It kind of is.
But Iguodala was a huge one for them to start. The only bad guy I see in this list is Danny Green, so that's a great lineup. But these guys from probably like 5th through 10th, like you see like only less than 10 points of a difference between 9th place and 5th place, and that was all because of the captains, because we all had the same group of people going. And Eric, I guess, was the closest out of all the podcasting crew to.
Yeah, I was 6 points away from finishing in the money. So,
but I mean, personally, I think if Klay hadn't gotten hurt, I think he could have kept, and he still finished the game with the most amount of points, fantasy points, of any player. So, I think he would have only improved his game, and I had him as a captain, so I was more reliant on him than anybody else was. And I feel like I would have been able to hang on to that 5th place if he had been healthy for me. So that's my excuse, so to say, for finishing in 9th. And we don't, there's no Game 7, so we don't have another lineup yet. But we are still going to be doing DraftKings for, we'll probably do them occasionally for NBA throughout the season, and then obviously NFL,
of course, will be doing them.
Yeah, NFL will be doing them, and normal fantasy, just your classic fantasy football league, we'll be talking about those sort of strategies also. But this wraps up like the finals games, and it's going to be a different dynamic when you've got, say, 8 games playing on a night, and there, that opens up the door for a lot of different players. in a lot of different strategies. But this one we had to keep picking the same players and stuff. It might have gotten kind of boring to listen to, so that'll be the future for the DraftKings.
Yeah, when we do the NBA regular season and the football regular season, it'll definitely get a lot more interesting because most likely, even if the three of us are in it, and I know Zach has some friends who are football fans that might play with us, even if there's 5 or 6 members of Clutch Crew Sports in the podcast, we'll probably all have completely different lineups, and because we'll be picking from 14 to 15 different games as opposed to one game where it's only 2 teams 6 games in a row, you know what I mean? So
correct, yeah.
For those of you that have listened to that the whole time, we appreciate your patience, and especially Robert, who played with us a couple times. I hope he had fun, and he looks like he finished in the money once and didn't finish in the money the first time. And then I know with our success, Connor got first once and finished in the money another time, and Zach and I finished in the money the most. But
I finished. I got a couple 4 out of 6, correct? So
I believe I had 4 out of 6 also, and then I think Connor had 2 out of 4 or something like that. So we all had between 50 to 75% win results, which I think is fairly good because it's difficult to win. In daily fantasy
especially
time.
This MJ guy, he's clutch, man. Like he's been in like probably 5 of our 6 lineups, and I want to say he's won every one of them. This guy's good, so I want to give a shout out to him. I have no idea who he or she is, but they definitely pick good lineups. I will say that. Every time I saw that username was in the game, I was like, oh man, this guy's good. It's not a
there's
a situation.
There's the MJ Michael Jordan's got this person has the clutch gene, obviously.
So that's it for DraftKings. Now we'll talk a little bit about our this is kind of a way too early free agency sort of little segment here. So this is a big year for free agency. Normally there's sometimes where there's years where it's like you don't maybe the 10th guy on this list, you barely heard of him. But this is a pretty deep list, and it's pretty strong, really. You've got Durant, but with Durant's injury, I don't think he deserves to be number 1 because he's probably not going to play. But if he signs a long-term deal, I guess it's going to be big news. But if he keeps his player option, as it says, the PO stands for player option. So if he accepts that and stays with the Warriors, I don't think that's
then he'll come up again. He'll come up again next year. If he keeps the player option, that'll be 1 more year, and then obviously with him and Klay Thompson both getting injured, that definitely throws a curveball into all of this because who knows it? Kevin Durant most likely would have declined the player option if he was healthy.
Yeah.
Even if he stayed with Golden State, he would have declined it and then tried to get a little more money or something if he was going to stay with Golden State. But now that he's injured, I'm sure he's going to take that guaranteed $31 million while he rehabs. That's what I would.
And the Warriors will probably accept it too, and hope that he might be able to come back for the finals for next year. Because they have a good enough team to be able to win without him. So it's going to be, I think, a win-win for him and the Warriors to potentially make a comeback, because you saw it with DeMarcus Cousins, how he missed a big chunk of the year. They didn't need him to play. He could just rest for him and come back and be on a guaranteed playoff team, So I think it's probably going to make sense for him to stay with the Warriors, possibly get another championship. I mean, what team is more likely to win probably than Golden State? But anyway, so we've got him, and then Kawhi. This is going to be the most interesting one out of them all. Even if he stays with Toronto, I'm fairly certain he's going to decline that player option. He's going to get max dollars no matter where he goes. And and really quickly, because I don't want to talk about this too long, but I think the top three candidates to land him are the Raptors in. Well, I'm only going to focus on two, the Raptors and Clippers. I think those are the only two realistic suitors for him, and he's an LA guy, so it could be the Clippers because the Clippers are really the better run and better managed team in Los Angeles. I know LeBron's on the Lakers, but the Clippers have a really good team. Their team is much better than the Lakers are. They made the playoffs, the Lakers didn't. You could say that they're better right now without, even with LeBron, you could say that the Clippers are better. They're much better managed, and he could stay in Toronto, though. I mean, I don't think anybody would fault that, but I think it's just going to come down to his preference and what he wants. Now that he's won in Toronto, he obviously believes he can do it again, but he might want to go elsewhere. And then Kyrie Irving almost certainly isn't going to be going back to the Celtics. It looks like we saw a report that said that he's probably going to the Nets. So that's going to be interesting to see. Those reports usually end up being true. So that's going to be interesting.
Yeah, for me, I mean, I guess if he's from there, I could see why. But if he's coming from the mentality of wanting to win championships, I'm not really sure why he would want to go there. And I don't know if he's really a good fit for the Nets either, because they also have D'Angelo Russell, but they play.
Russell's on the list here, so he's a free agent. So
Where's he at on there?
They have him as number 12. You see that?
Okay. Oh, and he's unrestricted. Okay. Yeah, I figured he would be a restricted free agent. Oh, so he may not be staying there then.
Yeah.
Oh, okay. Well, never mind. That changes my thoughts on that. Because at first I was like, well, they play the same. Like, they're both shorter point guards. Like, there's not really a fit there. But I guess if Russell leaves, then that changes my argument there. But
that'd be a weird combination of both them. That's a very, very poor defensive, from your guards lineup. Yeah. So that's Kyrie. Well, I mean, we're going to talk more in depth about all these guys. Kemba, I saw somewhere where he wants to stay in Charlotte, but he's open to hearing other teams. But I think there's a good chance he stays with the Hornets. That's the team that Connor's a fan of, so he'll be able to talk more about the Hornets. But they don't have a great team around them. But
if he wants to win a championship, I don't think staying there's the best move.
Yeah, probably not. But I do know with the way that these NBA salaries work, you get more money if you re-sign with the team that you're on. So if he ends up wanting to leave the Lakers or something, the max money he can get from the Lakers is, I want to say, like $30 million less than he can get from. So that's, financially it would make sense for him to stay there, but it's going to come down to his preferences, and he does
for sure.
Obviously like the Hornets because he hasn't demanded a trade or anything like that. So he's got, so that's a positive and hope for Charlotte. And then Klay, I'm 99% sure, he's a Warriors guy. So I think he's going to come back. Obviously the Warriors want him to come back. I think that's a no-brainer. Kristaps is a restricted free agent, but they're going to, he's got the RFA. So
Dallas will match whatever. They didn't trade for him just to then let him leave. Like they'll match whatever offer another team gives him.
Yeah. Cousins is a wide open guy. I haven't really heard what team's going to be suiting for him. Butler, the Lakers have been the biggest name or the most frequent team to come up with his discussions.
Please God, no.
Vucevic's interesting. I know the Magic want to bring him back. I don't know if he will be back, but I think as a Magic fan, I'm kind of excited for the possibility of him re-signing because he actually made the All-Stars in this year's previous All-Star game, so he's an All-Star center, and I have my hopes that D'Angelo Russell will sign with us because we obviously need a point guard, and I think we would have the cap space to sign him, and I mean that if D'Angelo Russell and Vucevic sign with the Magic, that's a pretty solid team overall because they've got Terrence Ross, who's a really good sixth man. They've got Aaron Gordon signed under contract for like 4 years or so. He's pretty good. And Fournier's not bad. They've got Jonathan Isaac, he's probably, I think he's going to enter his third season. This first year, he was injured a lot, but he played really well against the Raptors in the playoffs. And they've also got Mo Bamba, who was their rookie pick from last year. He didn't play a lot because of injuries, but he's going to be great defensively. He's got like the biggest wingspan in the NBA. So, they've got I think the Magic have a solid team, probably one of their best teams that they've had since Dwight Howard left, and they made the finals back like 10 years ago or so. But if D'Angelo Russell signs there, I think that'd be huge for him, and that could potentially bring him up to like a top 4 or 5 seed in the East next year. So, but then you got Tobias Harris, Chris Middleton. I'm not sure why JJ Redick is 13 on this list, but there's still a bunch of good quality guys on this list.
There's a lot of Bucks players on there, so it's going to be interesting to see what they do because next year they want to give Giannis the max. So
Middleton is definitely going to decline that player. I know that player option's really cheap, so he's going to decline that. Brogdon, they'll probably bring back. He's restricted, and Lopez will probably move on from him because he's going to get a lot of money somewhere because he had a good season. But that will wrap up our little free agency talk. And really quickly, I don't want to comment too much on this, but I'll show you guys the ESPN came up with these power rankings, way too early power rankings for next year, and they've got the Bucks number 1 in the power rankings. They've got Toronto number 2, Philly number 3, Denver number 4, Clippers number 5. And in case you're like me, when I was reading this, I was like, well, where are the Warriors? The Warriors are 6. So this is an interesting. I didn't go through and see all the teams. I guess the Lakers are 8 and Rockets are 7. But really quickly, let's just see where the Trailblazers and Thunder are. So the Trailblazers are 10, the Thunder are 11. So those are 2 pretty close teams. Obviously, they face each other in the playoffs. They're pretty evenly matched, but
basically the Lakers are 8th when they didn't even make the playoffs.
Yeah, seriously. So I don't have, I actually have a lot of problems with this list, but I'll say the one that people might be like have problems with that I don't actually is Denver at number 4. Denver's a really good team, and they've had virtually no playoff experience, and so I think they're only going to be getting better. I guess the Clippers, I think Kawhi's coming there, but then the Raptors are still 2. So the way that, because this was voted and taken averages of, so I guess some of these voters thought Kawhi's going to stay with the Raptors, so they put him number 1. Some of the voters thought he was going to go to the Clippers, so that boosted him. So I definitely don't think this is how the standings are going to finish out in this order.
Yeah, because he obviously can't go to both. So.
Yeah. So no, like one of those teams isn't going to be in the top 5. And then I don't know about the Bucks being number 1. They were good, but I can't put them number 1.
They could be losing some people. Which is going to be...
Same with the 76ers, so...
Yeah, because Jimmy Butler's probably gone. Maybe they bring Tobias Harris back, but Jimmy Butler, from what it sounds like and the reports I'm hearing, is definitely gone. I mean, he got traded there, so it's not like he chose to be there. He obviously got traded from the Timberwolves. It's been a weird road for him because he got traded to the Timberwolves and then he didn't want to be there anymore. So he got traded to the 76ers and then now he doesn't want to be there anymore.
He's bouncing around for sure.
I'd be a little weary of that if I'm an NBA team potentially bringing him in. But it seems like the Lakers have a ton of interest in him, and please, Lord, no. I don't want to see LeBron have another super team. He's already had two. That's
Well,
enough.
the way I see it though is like LeBron is trying to. I mean, I guess before Kawhi, let me go back to the free agent list, but LeBron I think was hoping to get like a Kawhi or KD, but I don't think
Oh,
either
he
ever come in. Or in Kyrie too. So I think he's having to
well, and
settle for like
he's wanted
Kemba.
to get Klay
Or
Thompson in the
yeah,
past.
Clay's not gonna. Yeah,
He's been trying to get
Clay
Anthony
should be
Davis
higher
in a
on the list.
trade.
Yeah, I think Clay should be above Kemba in this list, but that's just a random thought. Yeah, I'm not going to debate that or anything, but I think Clay is better than Kemba.
Well,
But
the only reason why
yeah,
I would say, of course, then again, KD is number one, which he has the injury, but I would
yeah.
just say Clay shouldn't be there because of he's obviously not going to play half the season next year, whereas
Oh, true. Yeah,
Kemba Walker will be able to. So if I was signing for the short term, I would take Kemba
yeah.
Walker, but if I was signing somebody for the long term, I'd take Klay Thompson. So
All right, yeah, that's good. Um, so I'll kind of fill in the miscellaneous news that Connor usually shows up or that Connor usually presents, but this is another NBA news that we didn't talk about, but Masai Ujiri, who's the GM for the Raptors, is under investigation for, I guess, battery of a police officer in Oracle. So I guess he was trying to go celebrate with the Raptors, and a police officer just assumed he was a normal guy or a fan or something, because I guess he didn't have any identification on him that he was important, an important guy. And so he had a confrontation with the police officer where he like shoved him out of the way or something, and the police officer tried to fight back. And it just seems like a messy situation, which is interesting. You know, just kind of weird. All like when I was surprised by this, and so I don't know why this happened. Really, it shouldn't have really happened. If he had an identification on him, he should have just shown it to the police officer. And if he didn't have an identification on him, why didn't he have like they mentioned it's like a gold wristband or something? Like, why didn't he have that? It just seems kind of weird. Was the police officer at fault? We don't really know. They say there's like a video or something. I haven't seen the video, but it's an ongoing situation, so we don't know too much about it. But kind of just weird overall.
yeah, it's going to be
Um,
interesting to see what happens going forward with it. But I don't know. Like you said, I don't really have anything
yeah.
to add to that. But that's
Okay.
just a weird situation.
Yeah. Yeah. And then we talked about this actually in the last episode where the Texans were being sued by the Patriots for tampering, for hiring a Patriots front office man for the GM spot. And now the Texans have this, and this is pretty recently, 9:27. We're recording this at 11:40, so this is really recent. But they have decided that they are not going to hire that guy for the GM position, and the Patriots are now the Texans aren't going to hire him. They don't care about the lawsuits, so they're going to drop that. So that it seems like interesting. So I guess the Texans did tamper with the you wouldn't if you're innocent, you wouldn't cave into this sort of thing. So I think this is
Yeah.
this is pretty clear that the Texans did tamper with this Patriots guy. So that's interesting.
Yeah, the
And it
Patriots must have had serious evidence and been like, okay, you want
yeah
to hire him from us? Well, this is what's going to happen. So
yeah
then the
so
Texans were like, no thanks, we're good.
yeah. And
Pass.
it's been kind of a weird offseason for the Texans. We'll get into more NFL offseason talk later, but to me, they didn't have a very good draft, and I can't recall who they signed. I know
Yeah.
I feel happy saying that as a Jags fan. I am perfectly fine with the former division or for the last season's division champion to not be having a good offseason, but they fired their GM. It seems like they're kind of in a little mess here trying to find a GM. They fired one after just 1 year. Kind of surprised, kind of weird. And they lost Tyrann Mathieu. Like I said, I can't maybe Eric knows somebody they signed in free agency. I can't think of him off the top of my whoever it is off the top of my head. So
I can take a look real quick while you're
yeah,
wrapping it up, and if I find anything,
okay. But
we can cut in.
I can't think of any up like right now. So, and I think a lot of people said they had the worst draft out of all the teams. So they seem to be having kind of a tumultuous offseason. And then the final topic that I want to talk
Oh,
about.
they did actually get
Okay.
Tashawn Gibson from the Jags. So
Yeah,
which
I
I
mean
mean,
that's a downgrade though from Tyrann Mathieu in my opinion. Uh, I'm not sure if they play the same safety spot, but Gibb, he kind of, teetered off at the end of the year. He's not the same as he was before. So I mean,
yeah,
he's a starter for him, but he's not like an all star, not an all star, but like a Pro Bowl safety or anything. But I
yeah.
did
It looks
forget
like
about
their
that.
other only like major signing move was they also signed cornerback Bradley Roby,
Okay,
who was with the Broncos for a few
yeah,
seasons.
he's pretty good. Um, I don't know between like the losses and the gains, it doesn't seem like they've had a very good. I think the teams in the division all have gotten better while they haven't. So it's gonna, that's to the AFC South. I think is gonna be the most competitive next year, but we'll save that for more NFL talk. We'll do like division talks and stuff. So, but the last story I want to talk about is college basketball related. This is probably our first college basketball news and discussion, but the consensus best graduate transfer, and there's a lot of graduate transfers out there, but the guy that most people say is the best is this guy named Kerry Blackshear. He was playing at Virginia Tech the past few seasons, and I guess he's considering a new program, but a lot of people think I think a lot of people say he's going to be transferring. It says he announced his plans to transfer after their coach left, and he's visited with Florida, Arkansas, going to visit with Tennessee, Kentucky, and maybe Texas A&M. So it definitely sounds like he wants to go to the SEC, and he's considering Memphis. So there's a lot of visits, and it says Gonzaga in the mix. There's a lot of different teams trying to get this guy. A lot of big time teams. Florida's a big time team. Arkansas had a bad season last year, but they're usually pretty good. Tennessee and Kentucky were really good last year. A&M wasn't very good, but I guess that coach is going to A&M that he used to play for, so they're potentially it could be a favorite in this sweepstakes sort of deal. And Memphis is having a great recruiting class. So, and this guy, I'll put up his stats here for you to see: 15 points, 7.5 rebounds, 50% shooting. He's a junior, and he was good for Virginia Tech last year. I didn't watch many ACC games, but I know Virginia Tech had a good season, and he's definitely a guy who, and he's a forward by the way too, 6'10", 250. So he's definitely a guy as a Tennessee fan that I'm hoping he not signs, but decides to commit to Tennessee. He'd definitely be starting for him if he ends up going there. I don't know the current rosters for the other teams as well, but I'm sure he'd be if any. I'm sure he's going to be starting wherever he goes, considering he has all these teams wanting him. But the college game is it's evolving where for football and basketball there's such a big deal now about these transfers, and it didn't used to be the case. It used to be like the guy stays with the school for 4 years and then gets drafted, but now it's all these, and especially in the NBA, it's like these star players stay for 1 year then leave, and then these you know they might stay for 2 or 3 seasons and then they might end up going to a rival team. Like it seems like it's getting more professionalized with how these transfers work. But like I said, I hope he comes to Tennessee, but not gonna predict it or count on it or anything such. But
just some wishful thinking.
Yeah. So I've been hearing. That's how I knew about this topic, is I saw an Instagram post where it had this guy and it showed a bunch of teams where he's considering, and Tennessee was one of them. So it caught my eyes, and I mean, it's pretty big. I mean, for college basketball, this is probably the biggest news out there, where he's gonna decide to go. And I do know that they have some investigations going on with like the recruiting scandals and stuff, but that stuff's kind of still, it's not really resolved yet, so we don't really know what's happening. I saw a report that said 6 schools are going to be getting penalties for some violations and such, but we don't know what 6 they are, so it'd just be speculation. I don't want to do that, so I'll wait till the facts come out on that. But this is going to be an interesting story, and we'll report back to you on where he ends up going. So, Eric, if you have any last words on this, I'll let you go ahead.
No, I think you covered it all with the current events. There were some definitely good points. This is unfortunately kind of the dead season time of year for most sports, except for baseball fans, which unfortunately Zach and I both just aren't huge followers of or anything. But there's definitely going to be other news to come out, of course, that we'll talk about. And we obviously are going to have the NBA draft special coming up that Zach mentioned. So there will be that to look forward to.
Yep.
In the meantime, you can follow us on all of our social medias. I handle the Twitter account. That's at Clutch Crew Sport. Couldn't put the S in sports. It was too long of a Twitter handle.
Oh, really?
That's why it's That's why it's at Clutch Crew Sport instead of sports. So, but that's the Twitter handle. I know for our YouTube channel, you can either search Clutch Crew Sports or search the channel name Mr. CDog54. That's Connor's YouTube channel that he's using. Zach runs the Instagram and Facebook, so I'll let him share that info.
Yeah, Facebook, just type in Clutch Crew Sports and you should find it. And same thing for Instagram, Clutch Crew Sports. You should be able to find it. I will say Facebook so far has been probably the most up to date with all the posts and everything. So so far that's been the one where we've been putting every episode out on Instagram. I don't have too much going on there yet. I plan on posting more of that stuff though. And Twitter, Eric is, he's pretty involved with the Twitter account. I'll give him that.
Yeah, I'm very active on there.
He's got 58
send
tweets.
Me a message, or
yeah,
I try to post a couple things a day. If you mention me in something or message me, I will definitely get back to you. So
yeah,
try to get those followers.
Yeah, Twitter's a great source to follow. And I mentioned this in the last one, but I'm going to try and make a meme every episode or so, or before every episode. So the Kyle Lowry one was the first one I did, and the last one, I'll pull it up actually for the YouTube audience. You're seeing my personal Facebook feed right now. But the meme I made here was about Draymond. It's taking a while to load, but this is just for the YouTube audience too, to see, because we've got the share screen on. But I made this meme here. Calls Kawhi, please come join us. Mainly, if you don't understand what this is about, it's a reference to his 2016 when the Warriors lost to the Cavaliers. There was reports that he was crying in the parking lot after the game, begging Kevin Durant to come join them. So this time, Kawhi is the top free agent, so he's calling Kawhi, pleading his case to join the Warriors, which if Kawhi joins the Warriors, I mean, that would be the most shocking thing ever, but I guess it's possible. But
yeah, you said Raptors and Clippers as your top 2 teams, so you forgot to throw the Warriors in there.
You never know, man. You never know. They definitely recruited Kevin Durant heavily and won him over, you know. But yeah, so that's going to conclude the episode of this podcast here. It was a pretty, you know, I think this is one of the more I feel like we did a pretty good job of analysis on the game. We had a lot of time focused on that, so not so much more of a predictions video. We kind of did light predictions for the free agency, but mainly an analysis focused episode, especially that first 40 minutes. So hopefully you enjoyed listening to our takes on everything. Eric and I agree for the most part on a lot of what we said. So hopefully you guys thought it to be interesting, informative, and enjoyed it. So with that being said, though, this episode is now over. See you guys later.
Yeah, guys, definitely. Yeah, like I said, follow us on the social media handles. We'll be getting more content out as soon as we can. And for those of you that have been listening and sharing, we appreciate it. And hopefully we can keep growing and giving you guys even more in the future. So I guess that'll wrap it up.
Yep.
So with that, guys, peace.